So you've been betting the NFL this year, and unfortunately, while you have had a good week or two here and there, overall the result has been negative. The season is half over and you don't have the same passion for it that you had back in the beginning of September. Well, I'm here to give you some ideas on how you can turn your season around in the weeks that are left. No secret system or locks here, just solid advice on how you can become a stronger sports bettor. So, pull up a chair. Let's talk about 5 ways you can turn your NFL season around. Nobody has ever said that it's easy to beat the NFL. In fact, if you've been watching my videos, you know that I've said just the opposite. The NFL is the toughest sport to beat in American sports betting. However, the way the calendar lines up, each week you're waiting just to plunk down some dollars on that weekend's games. Nobody can avoid the NFL's allure when it comes to betting, including yours truly. However, there are some smart ways to bet the NFL, and there are some not so smart ways. If you've been losing money betting the NFL this year, you may want to stop and reevaluate and see if there are some smarter ways to bet. Oh, and if you're making money so far on the NFL this season, well, congratulations. You might also want to stick around in this video. There might be something in it for you as well. By the way, if you like this, click that like button below. That lets YouTube know that this is content more people should be seeing. And if you don't like this content, feel free to click that thumbs down icon as well. In fact, go ahead, click it twice. Nearly 75% of my audience has not subscribed to my channel. Now, while I try not to take that personally, I've got a lot of great videos that will make you a stronger sports bettor. Subscribing makes sure that you see these videos as soon as they become available. Consider subscribing. It encourages me to make more content like this. Okay, the first way to turn your NFL season around is to narrow your focus. The NFL is 32 teams of ever-changing information and personnel. Trying to keep up with the ins and outs of all 32 teams every day is a job better left to guys like Adam Schefter and Ian Rappaport, and they're not even bettors, at least that we know of. If you've got action on every game, on the side, on the total, on halves, and some player props sprinkled in as well, you're likely trying to do too much. You're more likely to miss a key angle or an injury if you're trying to handicap the entire NFL. If you narrow your focus, you can often see things much clearer. Here are a couple suggestions on how to narrow your focus. If you have just one TV to watch the games and not some complex game package, focus on just the games you have available for you to watch. The primetime games and whatever your choice is on the Sunday early and late game windows. Now, this doesn't mean you need to have a wager on each of those games. This just allows you to select which teams you're going to follow week to week to find information on. It allows you to block out the games that you're not going to be betting on and just focus on those 5 games. Conversely, you could consider focusing on just a single division in the NFL. This is a good way to narrow your focus and just focus on the news and information coming out of those 4 organizations. You'll get to know those teams much more intimately, and you'll have 2 to 4 games per week to bet your knowledge on and not be distracted by the rest of the NFL. Another way you can narrow your focus is to just handicap a part of the game. Focus on totals, not sides, or focus on just the first half or the first quarter even. There are plenty of derivative markets to play in NFL games. This is a good way to shorten the game for yourself and not be tossed about by variants that might be introduced in other parts of the game. There are so many varied ways to bet the NFL that there's no harm in becoming a specialist when it comes to your NFL handicapping. There are a lot of things that you can see once you narrow your focus when it comes to the NFL. Now, this may mean that you might have some games that you don't have any action on, and I know for some of you, that's going to be a little tough. However, you can't lose what you don't bet, and by narrowing your focus, you may end up ending your Sundays with more money in your pocket than you started with. For those of you who have watched my other videos, you know I tend to talk a lot about the science of sports betting and the art of sports betting. The art being the ability to win and maintain longevity at a sportsbook. There are plenty of bets that sportsbooks would prefer you not feast upon. I described that dynamic in my video, The Betting Pyramid. However, if you've been losing at the sportsbook while betting NFL sides and totals, you're entitled to visit the dessert section of the buffet pretty much as often as you'd like right now. Now, I've been a professional gambler for a while now, and I've had many trips where my losses were quite considerable. Whenever that happens, I go into something that I've termed Mooch Mode. Basically, I'm looking to take advantage of whatever the casino will send my way as long as it's free or very advantageous to me. I'm not looking to give them much risk on my behalf while I take time to recover my losses. And I'm also not above going to my host and begging for a handout. Now, the world of sports betting is slightly different, and some of you are playing at unregulated books or maybe with bookies, and the idea of comping you for your losses just doesn't exist. Vegas sports books have long had the reputation of comping you anything you want, as long as all you want is a bottom shelf well drink at the casino bar. However, those of you that are in regulated states know that the concept of hosts and VIP services is prevalent among these newly minted sports books. If you bet at a certain level, you may have been approached by a host who has offered their services. Well, if you've been losing in the NFL, now is a good time to take advantage of those services. See what they can set you up with. Maybe it'll be some free bets, maybe it'll be a loss rebate going forward, maybe it'll be a gift basket, who knows? Even if you don't have a host, if you've been losing on the NFL, you've extended the runway in front of you where you can take advantage of odds boosts and promotions without much concern over repercussions. We've talked before about how these positive EV wagers are intended to buy your loyalty, and you'll need to be careful when taking advantage of them. However, when you've been losing, it's the perfect time to enact Mooch Mode and take advantage of anything they'll offer. Now, building off that, the third way to turn your NFL season around is to focus on the low-hanging fruit. Some of you may remember when I referenced this graphic in the past. You may think that the fruit at the top of the tree is where you want to pick from, trying to beat NFL sides. However, the work necessary to get to that level is likely beyond 99% of bettors. It's much easier to go for the lower hanging fruit. If you've been losing this NFL season, you may want to evaluate how much you've been trying to get at the low hanging fruit. Now, we just talked about odds boosts and promotions, and yes, that is definitely low hanging fruit. So low that just about anyone can profit from it. But more specifically, I'm thinking about player performance props. They are widely available during the NFL season. Again, like promotions, books tend to get tired quickly if you abuse them on player props. However, if you've been losing this NFL season, your prop action is more likely to be tolerated. Player props are beatable. There's no two ways about it. Sportsbooks have them largely as an amenity to lure in players. Some sportsbooks are better at player props than others, but the amount of time necessary to become proficient at beating player props is far less than the amount of time it takes to become proficient at beating NFL sides and totals. So while you've got the leeway, you might as well take advantage of the opportunity. Just remember that a sportsbook's charity only goes so far. If they notice that you've transitioned into just being a prop player, well, they're probably going to limit you, and the limits will be small enough that it's not worth your time to even try to beat these props anymore. That's just the way it goes. If you're tired of losing week in and week out, I strongly recommend you pay some more attention to player props. Look at how the quarterbacks match up against the defense. Look at how running backs and see if they're facing a stronger rush defense than they have in the past. Tight ends are always a forgotten subset. Look at which offenses utilize tight ends more than others. There's a world of information out there. And always remember to line shop when dealing with player props. That's a large reason as to why they are so beatable. The fourth way to turn your NFL season around is to eliminate the bad habits that many recreational bettors fall into. Look, the NFL lends itself to be a very popular parlay sport. With games happening concurrently, it's a fun way to get more action down and hopefully get a big win on the day. Bettors love to bet parlays on NFL Sundays. And you know who else loves parlays? Sportsbooks. They would love it if all of their bettors only bet parlays every week. Their revenue numbers would be fantastic. When you're betting a parlay, you are compounding the house edge across each leg of that parlay. So the house edge on a typical bet of a team against the spread might be 4.5%. If you were to parlay 3 of those teams together, you've now increased the house edge to 12.5% relative to the initial amount bet. Plus, you're also cutting down on the probability that you're actually going to cash the wager. For many recreational bettors, the way they play parlays is largely a lottery scratch-off card. They don't expect to win, but they expect they'll win once in a while, and that once in a while will overcome all of the weeks and weeks of losses. Well, the inconvenient truth is that the math behind it all says that it won't. Now, if you're a parlay bettor, you need to reduce your variance. You'll be far better off betting each game individually than trying to score with a parlay or a round robin. And if you still feel the need to make a wager, parlaying all of the straight bets you've already made, well, I'm not here to stop you. Just moving the majority of your wagering into independent wagers rather than wagers that are all dependent on each other will be a huge step forward for you. Another bad habit that people get into is waiting till game day to wager. As I've said, the NFL is the most efficient American sport relative to the betting markets. If the closing line is 7, then there's a good chance that the proper fair line on that game was 7. Now, with only one trial, anything can happen. However, you're making it far more difficult on yourself trying to beat that closing line than had you bet earlier in the week. But there are also some really good books out there that are easy to read and will speed you along the path at being better at this racket almost immediately. Have you ever heard of a Wong teaser? Well, if not, you need to read Sharp Sports Betting by Stanford Wong immediately. Focusing on Wong teasers might just save your season. The link to the book is in the description below. Also, have you read The Logic of Sports Betting by Matthew Davidow and Ed Miller? Well, if not, you really should consider reading it. It is a great book on helping you to think logically when it comes to sports betting. And you'll need to do that in order to have a fighting chance against the sports books. The link to that book is in the description below as well. My last tip for turning your season around is to punt. Seriously, consider giving up on this NFL season altogether. You can still make some recreational wagers here and there as you see fit, but if in watching this video you realize that you've got a lot of work ahead of you to just get to where you have a puncher's chance of competing against the sports books, well then there's no harm in deciding to move on to the next sport early. Sometimes trying to correct bad habits or find a way to beat a sport in the middle of the season is like trying to fix the plane while flying the plane. I'm recording this in 2020, and while I hope this content is evergreen, this is not a bad year to just stop and move on to a sport that hasn't started their season yet. College basketball, the NBA, the NHL, they've all yet to start, and you've got several weeks where you can get up to speed and be able to hit the ground running when they do start. Sometimes it's tough to focus on a sport when the rest of the world's attention is not on it. However, those are the times when you can possibly find things that the rest of the world can't see. There's no shame in deciding to abandon your aspirations of beating the NFL this year. Many have tried, most have failed. Focus your energy elsewhere, and hopefully you'll plant some seeds that will grow and prosper later on. Also, in closing, let me say that if betting ever becomes a vicious cycle of constantly chasing losses with bigger bets and parlays, or if you find yourself making large, uncomfortable wagers on the night games because your day games have gone so poorly, that may be a sign of things that the advice in this video can't cover. That's a sign of problem gambling. Now, there is no shame in taking a few weeks off to cool down and get your head straight. Betting on the NFL or any sport doesn't have to be like that. If you are betting from a regulated state, there are tools available to help you enforce a cool down period. And no matter where you're betting from, there are hotlines that you can call to talk you through the low points that might come from compulsive gambling. My goal here is to help make sports betting more sustainable and profitable to you. And I hope this video has contributed to that in some way. Be sure to check out some of my other videos, and I hope to see you here next time as well.